Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Kent, Matt Goodwin. Look, 80 migrants were rescued earlier on today after a boat got into difficulty crossing the channel. I've got to say, you know, one of those people on the boat was a 6-month-old baby. Why on earth would anyone, and I have to caveat this, who is safe in France, risk the life of a 6-month-old baby on that journey across the channel? Anyway, what do you make to all this, Matt Goodwin?
Well, we need to solve the crisis, and the way we solve the crisis is through keeping the legislation we've already got. We need the illegal migration bill, and we need an active third country deterrent. That's the only thing that's going to stop people from actually risking their lives in the channel. And then we need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, or at least ignore some of the ECHR rulings. And then we probably also need to reform things like the Human Rights Act, because I don't want anybody dying in the channel. Now, what Labour's going to do, made it very clear, Labour's going to repeal the Illegal Migration Act, going to overturn Rwanda, and it's going to send a big, loud message to every would-be illegal migrant and people smuggler around the world. Britain is open for business, and we're going to have more children dying in the channel, more illegal migrants dying in the channel, and it will be on Labour's hands. We need to solve the crisis as quickly as possible.
Stella?
You think it's good value for money, paying millions of pounds to a foreign government to get rid of literally a handful of people? It will be like less than 2% of asylum seekers.
125,000 people is a handful of people.
Yes.
125,000 lives.
You think we should spend millions of pounds? We should give millions of pounds. We should hand them over to Rwanda. You don't think we have other things to spend that money on?
How much are we spending a year on the illegal migration crisis?
How much are we?
£4 billion every year.
Cool, okay, and you think that this is going to solve it then?
I think you cannot solve this crisis without an active third country deterrent.
Does the fact that we spend so much money not tell you something about how dysfunctional the system that the current government has in place?
I agree with you on that.
This is a conservative government that has been in place for 15 years.
I agree with you.
And they are saying that they are going to reduce immigration. They have been saying that for 15 years. So the fact that we're spending so much money, what does that tell you? Does it tell you that there is a magic solution to solve our immigration, our illegal immigration problem, which is different from a legal immigration problem, and they're just not pulling the levers? Is that what it's telling you? No. It is telling you that immigration is a very, very complex issue, that the conservative government has been lying about it. It tells you also that they're completely useless and they have failed to deal with this.
I agree.
But as I said before, my biggest issue with this is that we're talking about immigration over and over again, and guess what? You can reduce immigration to zero tomorrow. Our problems are not going to be better. In fact, they could very well be worse.
When you say problems, what do you mean? Do you live in an area that has been changed by uncontrolled immigration?
I live in London. I used to live in my land, which probably has changed with immigration. Well, I'm an immigrant, so you are asking me if I live in an area that has been changed by immigration. Well, I'm an immigrant, so I don't know, maybe I've changed my area. I hope for the better.
Just briefly come in, because I think the one thing the British people deserve above everything is secure borders and the ability of their government to control who is coming in and out of their country, which is their home. So that's the starting point for all of this. Immigration matters to people because, look, Thomas Sowell once said it's the only issue that we talk about in terms of how to help people break the law. And people find that very annoying. We constantly talk about how to make it easier for illegal migrants to enter the country, and we know that that comes with serious costs, like the girls who are being sexually harassed in places like Kent, like the girls who are sexually exploited in northern towns. And I think people have had enough, and I agree with you. The Conservatives have been disastrous on this issue. I've talked and written endlessly about how terrible the Conservatives have been on illegal and legal migration. But Labour aren't going to solve it either. And the reason that Nigel Farage and Reform are doing so well is because everybody out there can see that on this issue they are consistently being misled by the two big parties. That's the reality of this situation. I don't want children dying like the 9-year-old, right? I have a daughter, OK? I don't want the 9-year-old young girls being killed on their way across the channel. We need an active deterrent, like Australia had, like Germany.
Trampled on, by the way, by other people in the boat. What a
trampled on by illegal migrants, men who didn't actually defend the little girl on the boat. Why is Germany talking about a third country deterrent? Why is Austria? Why is Italy? Why are many other Western countries now realising that mass uncontrolled migration is a complete disaster, including left-wing politicians in places like Sweden, who have now said, we don't really want migrant gangs running around downtown Stockholm setting off bombs. I don't think the left are realistic on this issue.
Matt, I'm completely realistic about immigration, and we can talk about the downsides for sure. I just simply believe that the most important policy issues for the UK right now is you need to build more houses, you need to deal with our crumbling infrastructure, you need to manage our failing public services, the NHS that is completely dysfunctional.
Okay.
You need to have energy security, and you need to deal with the cost of living crisis. And unless you deal with all of these issues, you're not going to.
Okay,
deal with
so take housing. Take housing. Take housing.
No,
one
take
example.
housing. Who's going to build all of these new houses? The problem with housing, the problem with housing is not that you have too many people. You don't have enough workers, and you don't have enough houses. Why do you not have enough houses? Why haven't we had all of these years of 15 years of Conservative government planning reform to allow us to build as many houses as we need for our young people? This is the question I want to answer, not whether there are too many immigrants.
So I think
if they're going to come here and become construction workers...
Answer then.
Yeah, so take housing as an example. I agree with you. The Conservatives have been terrible, that we need to change planning, we need to build more homes. But let's be realistic. We built 190,000 homes last year, right? And the government target's 300,000. On current trends, with the levels of migration we have now, we need to build 550,000 homes every year. We're basically 4 million homes short of what we need in order to keep up with the immigration-driven pressure. Now,
immigration needs to come down.
So you agree? Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say things like, well, why are we talking about immigration? We should be talking about housing. Or why are you talking about immigration? We should be talking about public services. Every major Western nation currently, from Canada to Sweden, is realising that the population trap of welcoming more and more people, by the way, who also get old, who also need the NHS, who also need housing, who also need public services, is leading Western nations into disaster. You can't say, if we talk about immigration, we're not talking about these issues. They're all interlinked. What we need to do is get migration back down to a reasonable level. And then I agree with you, change things like planning, build more homes, reform the NHS. Of course they are. Everything we're living through in this country right now is a policy choice, a disastrous policy choice, first taken by Tony Blair in 2004, and then carried on by David Cameron, and then, by the way, by Boris Johnson, who completely liberalised migration and put it on steroids. These all reflect policy choices. We could make a different choice tomorrow. We could say we're going to reduce legal migration below 100,000, we're going to leave the ECHR, we're not going to have children and adults dying in the Channel. We could make that choice if we wanted. Our elites, our ruling class, are refusing to make that choice.
Well, there you go. What do you make to all of that? Very strong opinions on here, and I know that you will have equally strong opinions at home. Get in touch and tell me your thoughts. I've got to just say, though, we were just talking about the Reform UK party. One of my members on the panel mentioned the candidate there that's standing in Boston and Skegness. I do just want to be clear, of course, other candidates are standing in that seat. As the list stands currently, they are as follows: David Dickinson, English Democrats, Alex Forbett from Labour, Richard Gordon Lloyd from the Lib Dems, Chris Moore from the Green Party, and of course Richard Tice, just mentioned there, from Reform. We've got Matt Warman as well from the Conservatives.